Good morning, afternoon, whatever time it is in your part of the world. We are getting ready to start painting here today. I'm just adjusting everything to keep it all in camera. My name is Lindsay Weirich, the Frugal Crafter. If you are watching live, if you could please let me know if you can see and hear me in the chat, that would be really great. If you go to my blog, there's a link in the video description. You can find the reference photo. I've actually have it on my phone here. I took this last summer outside on the deck, so I got a really strong shadow. And I really like that. So I do have this up on my phone. I'm going to keep that off camera probably because it's just going to be glary. But I do have the actual painting here that I did in this little sketchbook on screen. And I really wanted the shadow to kind of be the star of the show. Now I've got the actual pocket watch and chain and key here, but I'm not going to get a strong shadow because of the way my table is lit. I have it lit for it to not have shadows on things so you can see better. But I think it's handy to have the actual reference if you can handy. I'm actually just going to set that right over here because it's more important to have that handy, I think. I'm working on a kind of unique paper here, and I see everyone saying they can hear and see me, so that's good. I've got a glittery paper. I'm not sure if that's going to show up on camera or not, but it's just kind of a fun novel paper from Paul Rubens, and I thought it'd be fun to kind of play with this and some granulating watercolors. I have these here from Masha's Watercolors, which is a Etsy shop. And yeah, we're just going to play. You don't have to have those watercolors. If you have like ultramarine blue, cobalt teal, lots of any of your cobalt colors, any of your Mars colors, those will all have granulating properties. So if you want that little bit of color texture, you can definitely use that instead. So I want to use those because that's what I used when I painted this painting originally. And oh, look, I got some fingerprints. I got my finger in some red paint today, and I touched my paper, so that's why I chopped it down to a square. And I just noticed I got it on my sketchbook too, but luckily it's just in a sketchbook and not on anything too important. I'm going to use my flat compass here to draw my circles. You could trace a cup or a lid or use a regular compass. I've kind of fallen in love with these things because they don't leave a point, like a hole in your paper when you use them. So they're flat, so you can stick them in your pocket or in your sketchbook and they don't take up any space. So it's really handy. The glitter paper, Laura asks if it's cotton or cellulose. It is 100% cotton. This is what the package looks like. It comes in like an envelope. I linked to it on Amazon. It's available in different sizes, and it's also available in hot press if you prefer a smoother texture. This is the cold press. I've used the hot press before. I used it in the Inktober picture of a baseball player. So if you want to check that out, you can. As we go along, if you have a question, you can type the word question in all caps. And then when I take a break for Q&A, I will scroll back and see your questions. I'll just take a quick peek if we have any before this. We also have moderators. Clark Fine Art is helping out moderating, and Joe Maskey will be along if he's not here yet moderating. So that should hopefully keep these spammers that want to ruin our good time at bay. I've had an awful hard time with spammers lately on my channel. So if you've been contacted by any of them as a reply to a comment, just don't respond, and I apologize. I'm blocking them as soon as quickly as I can. So I'm going to start off. I'm just going to scoot this out of the way so my compass doesn't hit anything. And I am going to get the pocket watch, and I want to fill the space pretty well. So I want this watch to be about this big. I want it pretty big. I want you to be able to see it good. And I'm going to draw with a Derwent Graphitin pencil because that has a beautiful texture to it. And also, I think it can dissolve when we paint. So that way I can go a little darker than I normally would because I know I'm going to be able to get rid of the lines. So I'm just going to see how far over do I want this to be. I think I want it a little bit lower than center. And maybe I'll have it just a little bit more to the left, so that way it won't be like smack dab in the middle. And then I'll have room for the little loop on the top. So let's go. I think I'll go here. This is going to be if this circle seems really big, then I'll just do the inner circle a little bit smaller. Whoops. Let's move this out of the way. Oop, broke my pencil. Broke the tip. I gotta sharpen this. are very soft, and I broke the tip. All right, so to make the second line, I'm just going to go ahead another hole there and just do that. All right, and then we have a little, I think I want to tip it more than I had in my sketchbook, so I'm going to take this little circle that's right on the inside and do that there. And then I don't have quite a big enough circle. I think this one will work. I'm just going to do the inner circle like this, and I'll freehand the outer circle, I think. I don't know what I did with my green circle circle template. I had one of those drafting ones. I have no idea what I did with that. That's weird because it's such a handy tool. And yeah, I'll probably thicken out this outer rim a little bit just to show some of the dimension on the side of the I think I'll make that a little bit bigger too. I'm thinking I might want that circle a little bit bigger, but I'm going to leave it like that for now. All right, so I think I want to put the hinge on the side. Let's see, the hinge would be right about here. Kind of like a straight line there. And then I'm just going to thicken out the bottom part here a little bit. And a replay of this will be available on my YouTube channel and on my blog. And my blog has the reference photos, finished artwork photo, and in the video player. So I'm not saving things on Drive anymore because I had a situation where I lost everything on my Drive. So if I have it on my blog, it should be a little bit more reliable. I'll put the hands here on the watch. I'm going more by my original reference photo than my clock. I don't know what happened to the time on this one, but apparently I have this box of pocket watches here, and like it just sits in my china cabinet for my china cabinet, which is just all still life stuff. Actually, I think I might want to make that a little bit bigger. Oh, you know what? I think that's what these little holes in the center are for. They're for doing bigger circles. Oh, I'm telling you, sometimes I'm not all that bright. As if you didn't know that. Let's try. Let's see, would that work? Let's see. I might need to sharpen this again. Oh, it doesn't want to spin. Okay, I got to sharpen this again. Let me see. Oh, come on, you. I need a stronger pencil or something. That doesn't want to spin. Maybe it would spin better if I had it this way. Now that I've made a kind of a mess there. Is it going to work? I don't know if this is going to work. Let's, I'll try it, guys. Don't do it in case it doesn't work. I think I need a mechanical pencil, though, because I don't think that will get in the hole. We're learning something new about our flat compass today. I should probably just get the pointy one. Goodness gracious, I got to put some lead out here. I'm pretty sure this is not how it's meant to be used. Oh, here we go. Okay. How big is that? That doesn't even line up right. All right, we need our eraser. Boy, this is falling to pieces really quickly, guys. Sorry. All right, let me get rid of that first circle that I did. All right. All the supplies I'm using are linked in the video description if you are in need of any of them. All right, let's try this again. Let me see. I need that to be a little bit higher than the little circle that I drew. Now I need to hold this somehow so that I can get the thing to spin. I've been talking up these flat compasses. Now you guys are going to think that I'm like, I don't know what I'm talking about. Okay, that looks good. Now I want a smaller one. Can I use this? I think I can use this one. There we go. Oh, come on. Just move. Goodness, it doesn't want to move. I'm going to snap my lead. I might just make dots and then I can... We're almost there, guys. Whew, there we go. All right, good enough. I can see where I can see what I'm aiming for at least. There we go. That's all right. It'll look rustic. Actually, now I think I'm going to make the circle part here a little lower. Regretting the fact that I have a pretty much a white background on this now. I'm going to really have to make sure that I can... well, actually, we'll have shadows. We'll be fine. We'll be fine. I'm not going to be using this big brush to paint with, so I'm going to use it. I'm using it to dust away crumbs. And we'll come back with this. Maybe go with a bigger circle for... There we go. I switched to the... I switched to my mechanical pencil just because I couldn't get it in those little... I couldn't get the graviton was too soft. It would snap when I tried to put pressure on it. That's okay. This is going to be fine. All right, I'm going to go back to the graphitin because now I'm going to draw the chain. Oh, sorry for the weird focusing. I know it does that sometimes. And my chain here is it was not attached. I just kind of faked it from my picture thing there. I'm going to put a link there. And the nice thing about the graphitin is that this will all be dissolved. So I don't even have to be that particular. I'm just going to kind of go try to mimic the way that I had it on my... It's got to wrap around the thing. Oh yeah, my links would be bigger too because I've made the watch so much bigger. I don't know if it would be easier to see my picture on my phone. I don't think it will. I think it's probably easier to see that because it's bigger. I'm gonna look at my phone though because I trust the picture. I'll put that over there for you though. I really like how the picture with the light looked. I'm more about getting the impression here than worrying about it being absolutely perfect. I want to make sure I have room for the shadow to show as well. Oh yeah, I want the key to end up over here. Maybe I should put that key in there so I have something to aim for. And of course, the key is going to be bigger. Let's draw a straight line for the base of the key. Got these two little bumps. Got a circle. We get two little ridges. So we got kind of like two circles. And then an oval that so it goes around those two circles. And oh, I had the little loop there was on the side. So let's take a look at that. So there, oh, that's what these two little things here are actually. there a metal loop, and then there is a circle off of that. And these little links are almost like, they're almost like V's. And you could actually just kind of draw a light line where you want the chain to go, and then just kind of fill in with your links. And some of the links will be twisted this way and that, so they're not all going to look the same way. Be a little bit more loose with it, and then you don't have to, that way if you have one thing that's not drawn perfectly, it's not going to stand out because you'll have all these different little chain shapes. All right, so then I want to sketch out the shadow, and I will be looking at my phone for that. I think you can find the photo on my blog, or you can look between my my painting and this. I'm just going to move this over so you can see that shadow really well. And I'm going to sketch it. I love dramatic shadows, especially if I'm going to use like watercolor, because watercolor does beautiful things when you use those granulating colors, when you work wet into wet. I'm going to bring this big round shape over. It's going to go over these elements. Just make sure that everything's on screen here. Oop. And let's see, we're going to have kind of a big shadow from that. And then we'll have this kind of loose shadow. Now here was really interesting. Look at how those links look in there. Isn't that fun? Isn't that just kind of exciting? So we got these big, chunky, fatter link shadows in here. It's just kind of like a jumble of triangles and lines. And I think that's kind of fun. And it gets closer up here, and then they kind of scoop away again. And then we'll see a little bit of shadow in there too. All right, I think we're good. All right, let's get right into the shadow, because the shadow is going to need some time to, it's going to need some time for the paint to mingle. I think I can just situating here a little bit. All right, so I'm going to use the cat's tongue brush that is in my set with craft ammo. You can use a round brush, it doesn't really much matter. And I'm going to wet this shadow area. I don't know if you can hear the furnace coming on, but it's going to be coming on and off. It's we got so spoiled last weekend. We had 70-degree weather, and then it got cold. Got cold yesterday. I spent some good time out in the pottery shed, and I moved it inside. I moved my pottery wheel inside on Monday or Sunday. I think a little bit both days. And I like how that graphitint color. If you have the graphitint pans, that would work really well too. So I moved my pottery wheel in. I moved my clay. I've moved my clay in earlier because we had some freezing temperatures. And I was working on my pottery wheel, trimming some mugs. Everything was great. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to take another try at making a big bean pot again, because my husband wants a bean pot for Christmas. And I made 2 big royal messes and used up all my clay. So, and now it's drying out a little bit so I can re-wedge it and try again. But, so very frustrating. Oh, and you know what else is frustrating? I forgot to bring my swatch down from those Mashal watercolors, and it's hard to tell what colors I have. Oh, I want to tell you about the watercolors I have here, because they're such a steal. These are the Rosa Gallery watercolors, and I have the modern set, And then I also have the set of 12, which is like $15. It's a great deal. 12 full pans of color. And then there were some doubles of the set. So I took all the colors that didn't have, I took all my originals and put them in here from the 12 set. And then any doubles I just put in my drawer to replenish as needed. So if you're curious about this line of paints, I cannot recommend their cardboard box sets higher. They've got a set of 24 in a cardboard box for like, I think it's like around $28, and they have a set of 12 that's $15. And then they've got a set, then there's the modern set, which has this beautiful cobalt teal that is, I think it's $39. And it comes in a tin. It's more expensive because it comes in a tin rather than in a cardboard box. So I'm starting off with some cobalt teal, but they are beautiful colors. They're a Ukrainian business. They are just wonderful. The quality for money is really good. If you like white nights, I think they use a lot of the same pigment stores as them, but I think they're just lovely. Okay, I'm gonna have to. I can't believe I forgot my swatch. See, these are, and the rosa paints, I like them so much. They're usually on my fun art desk upstairs, like the desk in the corner of my bedroom. And so you don't see them in videos too often, but I do like them quite a bit. So I'm just making little puddles. So I can't remember what the colors were because I always have my swatch upstairs. So I'm just grabbing a few different colors to drop in there. What one is that? Ooh, that's pretty. Use a little bit of that. Once we get our shadow in, I will take a break for questions. The reason I wanted to do this first, another thing I wanted to let you know about colors that tend to granulate. So those would be your colors that have the word ultramarine in the name, or cobalt in the name, or Mars in the name. Those are all good indications that they will granulate. And when you're working with granulating colors, you want to make sure they have ample time to dry. Because if they don't have ample time to dry, or if you try to speed them ahead, you try to like use a heat tool and make them dry faster, then you're going to end up with a lack of granulation. You need the time. They need to sit in a puddly kind of solution so that the heavy pigments can fall out of the mixture, and that's what makes them granulate. That's why I want to use this brush, because it's super juicy. And I like to let them mix on paper because then you get a little bit more interesting effect. I'm going to add some yellow ochre to this. Yellow ochre or raw sienna, whichever you have. Raw sienna can sometimes granulate a little bit more. I'm not exactly sure why. They're generally made from the same pigments. Not always, though. The yellow ochre is going to interact with the purple and desaturate it too, so you won't have a super bright purple color. And I know we're going to use yellow ochre elsewhere, so it's nice to get it in the shadow while we're at it. It's not super important what colors you use here. Just try to recycle them elsewhere in the picture so that you end up with harmony. I'm going to thicken this out a little bit, I think. I also have a little too much water here, so it's difficult to control. So I'm going to blot my brush off on a paper towel, and then I can go in there and kind of drink up that extra moisture. I'm going to fill that area right in there. Puddles are okay, but if you have really standing water, you'll end up with back runs. And that is not necessarily what you want. I'm not even worried about where the chain is crossing the shadow. I can deal with that later. I'm not going to worry about that so much. And I'm going to pull some of that wet paint right out into the chain shadow. I don't like the shape of this. There we go. And I feel like it should be a little bit more distorted over here. because we have that long sun distorting. Like when you're walking down the road, have you ever like the night you're walking the dog down the road and the sun is just right and it's making you look a little taller and a little thinner and you're like, oh, I look good as you're looking at your shadow when you're walking down the road. Yeah, it's kind of what's happening here too. Now, because the chain shadow is not as big, I'm not going to pre-wet it. What I'm going to do is just pick a different color every time I go to load my brush. And I'm going to try to just kind of let the color bead up. I want a little more purple, so I'll pick purple up this time. So ultramarine purple, that's one that granulates great. Cobalt violet, cobalt blue, ultramarine blue. You could do ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. I'm really treating this very loosely, because if you have contrast, so like for instance, a loose shadow and a tightly defined focal point, it works. Having that contrast makes your piece more interesting, and then you don't have so much a competition between your elements. And your eyes can't focus on everything at once anyway. So by doing that, you actually, it ends up looking more realistic, which I know sounds weird, that like, how could this thing that's way less realistic look more realistic? And it's just how your brain perceives things. Let's sop up a little bit, as I have a couple of buckles. I didn't tape my paper down either because I was keeping a white background. So generally I worked in a sketchbook, so I wouldn't be taping that edge down either. Got some really interesting textures going on here. I like that orangey color. I think that was this. You could use burnt sienna. Burnt sienna and ultramarine make a beautiful granulating gray. Experiment. This really, for this particular artwork, there isn't like a recipe you have to follow. Just play with those granulating colors you've been collecting and hoarding if you have, and if not, find out the ones that will granulate in your palette and go ahead and use them. And let the colors mix on the paper for the most interesting results. And if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. Type the word question in all caps, and we will get to those in a second. I feel like I need a little bit more purple over here. If you need to smooth anything out, you can smooth out edges while everything's still wet, and then you got to leave it be and stop fussing with it, because you'll lose your granulation if you don't. All right, I think that's good. I think I can leave that be now. And I'm going to look back and see if anybody has any questions so far. I'm really curious to see how this is going to look with a sparkly paper when we're all done. And got a lot of people chatting. We have 179 people here right now. That is really great. I know it's going to be tough to it can be tough to make these streams in the middle of the day, and I do appreciate you guys coming on by. Okay, Nerdy Watercolorist asks, what is a cobalt teal's pigment number in this set? It can be made of different pigments, and I have Mission Gold's PB28, so that should work. That should work. I believe this one is PG50. I'm not sure if it has it on the pan itself. I thinking it's PG50 in this one, but I'm not 100% sure. If anybody knows for sure, you could pop it in the chat. But either way, if you have either of those, they should granulate. Patricia says she found the compasses on Amazon in a pack of 12. Yes, it's a pack of 12. I thought I was buying a pack of 10, and then I was like looking, and I'm like, there was still 10 in my package after I'd taken a couple out. I'm like, are these things breeding in my studio? I'm telling you, everybody is getting mediocre pottery and flat compasses from me for Christmas. Laura Sykes asks, what paints am I using today? I probably missed it. You can see in the video description, I have them linked, but I'm using some granulating colors from Masha's Watercolor, who is a handmade watercolor maker on Etsy, and also Rosa Gallery paints from Amazon. I'm just looking back to see if I missed any questions. And if you're watching the replay and you don't wish to listen to the Q&A and the chit chat, anytime I say I'm taking a break for questions, feel free to just jump ahead a couple minutes, and you'll be back into the painting action. All right. Oh, thanks, Angela, Clark Fine Art, letting everyone know about the brushes. Yes, those are my signature brushes through Craft Ammo, and there are still some left. All right. Okay, so our shadow is still wet, so we got to make sure we don't paint right up against it, or we're going to have it splooping into the rest of our painting. But what we can work on is the center part. Now, there is a strong shadow on the face of the watch. So what you want to do is actually paint. We're going to paint the background in first, and then we'll let that dry, and then we will paint that shadow. But by the time we need to let that dry, hopefully our paint will have given us the granulating appearance we want enough that we can go in and just use a heat tool. Once you've got the appearance of the granulation that you like, you can heat set it, and it will just lock it at that point. But you do want to let it sit for a while and not heat it, so you get that beautiful look. So I'm going to use some yellow ochre, and I don't want it so wet, so I'm switching over to my number 8 round golden Taklon. So your golden Taklon fibers don't hold as much water as, say, a faux squirrel. Those black fibers, those are more absorbent. So I've got some yellow ochre. I'm going to take a little bit of, let's do a little either burnt umber, burnt sienna, whatever you have for a brown is going to be fine. I can't remember what is in this palette, and I have no idea what it is with my swatch. I think it's upstairs on my desk. This is actually a pretty good color right here. I think it's kind of taupey. I just want to make sure I make enough so I don't have to remix. All right, I'm not going to pre-wet the paper because it's a fairly small space, and I think I can manage to paint it in. And I'm just going to go in with a wash of this color. I think the Paul Rubens sparkle paper buckles a little bit more than other 140-pound papers, because I am feeling a little movement here, and generally, like if I was working with Arches or Hahnemühle, I don't think I would have any bounce to the paper at this level of saturation. So just something I noticed there. You might want to tape it down. I did tape down when I was using the hot press to do the baseball player, but I always find that hot press tends to buckle a little bit more anyway. So I did that there. So I tend to tape down hot press paper. All right, we got a nice flat picture here. I want to make this a little more interesting, so I'm going to pick up some of my granulating colors, very, very watered down. I'm going to blot my extra water off on a brush, though, because I don't want to cause bubbles, or back runs, rather. That was probably a little juicier than it should have been, but that's all right. As long as I get all this done while it's still wet, I shouldn't have any issues of back running. And I'm pushing the color here. These colors did not appear in my, oh yeah, I'm going to get back runs if I don't stir this up. See how a back run is starting to form there? So to get rid of that, I'm just gonna re-wet the entire thing, just kind of go over everything with my brush, so it can't have that drying edge. That's when a back run happens, is when you've got let's see, how can I put this? Non-consistent drying across the surface of your paper. So if part of your paper is drying faster than the rest, you get a back run. If you've got a puddle, that's when that happens when you get a puddle, because a puddle, you get it wetter in some areas, the edges are drying and the center's still wet, and that's why you end up with that. I'm going to just pull some of this color over here because it is a little darker. But I like to have colorful, especially if I have a big area like this. I want to have a little bit of color and interest. I like that pink in there, kind of, or maybe even a little bit more of a brighter yellow. Ooh, that's a little green. I don't think I want green in there. Well, when you're doing a wash, you want to get in and get out. You want to get the colors in the way you want them and then just get out so it can dry. Okay, I think that's pretty good. So I am going to use a heat tool now. We've got some granulation happening. I think it's fine at that level. I'm going to take a real quick look at questions, and I'm going to dry this at the same time. So let's see what you guys are chatting about. Nell, I am working on the Paul Rubens 140-pound cold pressed glitter paper. Feel free to use whatever paper you have. A cold pressed paper or a rough paper will give you more granulation texture than a hot press paper, but you can certainly use whatever you like. If you're going to use a 90-pound paper, you will probably want to at least tape it down, if not soak and stretch it. But I do think you get better granulation on your paper if it's not stretched, because when you soak and stretch a paper, it does remove some of the sizing. So just an FYI, the sizing is the barrier between the paper and the paint, and it can help your water sit on the paper and let the colors fall out a little bit better to give you the granulating effect. Rhonda asks, what is the best affordable 100% cotton watercolor paper? I would say it's always been the B creative paper, or B paper from, well, let's just buy B. It used to be able to be bought for 50 sheets for about $16 on Amazon. I haven't seen that deal lately. I bought a pack of 25 sheets of 22 by 30 inch paper for, I think, about $79 on NASCO a few years ago. So that's always been a really good option. Now, gosh, everything's getting so expensive. I'm not sure what the best buys are now. I did see Paul Rubens has a couple of, they call them sketchbooks, but they're actually blocks on Amazon. And there's been it's like a 2-pack of 20 sheets each for around $17. And I haven't used that, but I have used many of their other papers and they've all been good. So that's something you might want to look for. And that's a block, so you don't have to stretch it. You do your painting and then you cut off that top piece and you get a fresh piece underneath. So that would be definitely worth checking out if you're in need of paper. I have enough paper to choke a horse. I really need to use up my dragon hoard of paper that I have under my bed. And if you are going to hoard paper, make sure you hoard it someplace where your temperature and your humidity levels are stable so you don't lose the sizing on them. And Clark Fine Art asks, if you have a paper that doesn't have enough sizing to your liking, what do you prefer to use it to help with the flow of the paint? If I've got a paper where the sizing's no good, I use it for gouache or pastel. I don't even bother with watercolor on that because it's more expensive to resize it, I think, than to buy new paper. So I'd just use it for a different medium. The Baileys say, are you referring to the B paper pack you bought at Walmart recently? What do you think of that? No, I'm not referring to that. That is not the same. That's actually fairly similar to the Fabriano Studio paper. It's not cotton. It's something else, but it's decent, but it's not a substitute for cotton paper. And I did see another question. Gail G asks, what are your favorite light fast red watercolors and blues? Oh my gosh, that's hard. Probably I'd have to go with my quinacridone reds probably for a light fast red. And blues, I use ultramarine more than anything. So, I mean, that's my favorite blue because that gets used the most. That's the one I have to buy the most and refill in my palette the most. I do like a cobalt teal a lot. Most of your cobalts are going to be light fast. Honestly, I mean, those are my favorites. Those are the ones I use the most. But I also like having other ones to pick from. Phthalo blues are generally pretty reliable as well. I say go by what you like. Look at the light fast ratings. Daniel Smith has a really good resource. They probably have the biggest range of colors. I also would go to Handprint and Art is Creation for light fast info. And a fellow YouTuber, Otto Cano, has updated her blog to have a huge pigment database that is available for free. So if you want to check that out as well, there's 3 good sources that you can avail yourself of. All right, I think that I caught up with those questions. Oh, one more this is a good one from Marika Reamer. How do you know if the paper sizing is accurate? Basically, you paint on it. If you see like speckles when you're painting on it and your paint doesn't want to flow and it's hard to blend and it just is not acting well, your sizing has gone bad. All papers have different levels of sizing. So like your favorite paper will be dependent on how much sizing you like. I like a lot of sizing, so I really enjoy arches. But if you prefer less sizing, like B doesn't have quite as much sizing on it. It's an adequate amount, but it's just not heavily sized. One paper that's on my bucket list to try, even though I just said I don't need any more paper, I really want to buy some, I think it's called Milford. It's a remake of the old Whatman paper, and it's made in, I think it's made in the UK. I don't see it for sale very often, but one of these days I'm going to break down and just special order some from Jackson's and pay the shipping because I really want to try that paper. It's supposed to be the most sized paper out there. And I like a lot of sizing because you get those granulating effects, and it's just really it's really nice. And you can lift right back to the paper if you want to. The sizing protects the paper, so you can scrub back to it a lot easier than a paper that doesn't have much sizing. Like a pastel paper or drawing paper wouldn't have any sizing to it because you want that grip for your pencils and your pastels to stick to. But your watercolor paper, you need a little bit of a lubrication on that paper. You need to be able to slow the absorption a little bit, and that's what the sizing does, and gives you a nice crisp edge instead of feathering. All right, so now we're going to paint the brass here, and I'm not going to clean my palette as we go because I'm going to want that palette sludge to help neutralize some of my colors and give me some interesting looks. Here I've got yellow ochre. I've got a little bit of that greenish mix to give it some patina. You could use some chrome oxide green. You could use some cobalt green. I'm not going to be painting the brass here in a way that's going to give me granulation. So even if your colors granulate, you can paint in a manner that will not enhance the granulation. By painting just wet enough on dry, you're not going to get that effect. And being able to control those effects is really important. Now, I had an instructor. I took an adult ed class a few years ago on painting figures in watercolor. And he actually is who told me about that paper. He actually bought the original Whatman paper at an auction back in the 70s. So like, if you take care of your paper, your sizing will not go bad. But, so I don't want you to think that if you find a great deal on paper, you can't buy it because your sizing will go bad on you. That's not the case. But if you have a fluctuation in temperature, humidity, that's when your sizing goes bad. But anyway, he bought an auction. Maybe it was a stash from the 70s and he bought it in the 80s or something. But anyways, it's precious. He barely, it's got to be, paper worthy, kind of like the old Seinfeld sponge worthy skit. It's got to be, worthy of being painted on that. But he swears by it. I don't think he's tried the Milford yet, but anyway, he was one that was telling me about that. And the effects that he gets, the granulating effects he gets, even with like non-granulating colors, is amazing. And he puts his paintings on stretcher bars and he wets the back of the paper with a like a milk jug, a gallon milk jug of water. He'll just pour water over the back of it and soak it from the backside. And he gets some really beautiful granulation and flocculating effects with even phthalo colors. It's really quite astounding. So that's another reason I just want to try that really heavily sized paper, because it's something about your paper when your paint can just sit in a pool of itself. It can just give you some really great, interesting textures. Here, I'm kind of dancing up against the edge of my line to reactivate that the pigment from the Graphitint pencil. Oh, and if you want a really affordable granulating paint, go for the Derwent Graphitint pan paints. That gives you gorgeous texture without a lot of cash. Because like that set of watercolors, that Mashes watercolors, is about $200, but a tin of 12 Derwent Graphitints is only going to set you back about 20 or 30 bucks. And you can find that at Blick. I'll try to remember to link that up. Blick generally has the best price. Sometimes Amazon will be the same. I swear that I think they check each other's prices and they change them accordingly to whatever the other guy is charging. But generally, if you're ordering, if you have a bunch of things to order, Blick is going to be cheaper. If you only have one thing to order, the shipping will get you at Blick. But customer service is great at Blick anyway, in my experience. Just try to reactivate that pencil, get that pretty color and texture in there. Okay, so here we have an area where I've got a little bit of a rough line because of the texture of the paper, and my shadow kind of scooted in there. So what I like to do in that event is get one of these brushes. These are not expensive. This is it's called a scrubber, and I recommend the Menta. This is the number 6 Menta by Royal and Langnickel scrubber. It says R8 SC if you're looking for R88SC. I don't know what that number correlates to, but this is the Menta watercolor line. And I like these scrubbers over other brushes that are called scrubbers because they use a golden Taklon filament instead of that hard white nylon that you see on a lot of brushes, which can actually damage your paper. These don't damage your paper. You could actually even take like a filbert. If you have like a filbert acrylic paintbrush that's small that has short bristles, those will also work. But I really like this one, and I think a lot of your big box craft stores will sell it. So what you want to do is make sure it's clean, wet it in clean water. And then you want to make sure you don't have any water on the ferrule, and you want to blot off the extra water. You got to have some, but you don't want a lot. And what I'm going to do here is I am going to turn my paper so I'm pushing away, pushing towards the line that I want to shore up here. And I'm just going to wiggle back and forth and scrub and push that out. So if your paper has a lot of sizing, this is going to be a piece of cake. It's going to lift up those colors. Plus, granulating colors tend not to stain. They're sedimentary, so they sit on the top of your paper rather than absorbing in. So your colors that stain generally don't granulate. Those would be your quinacridones and your phthalos. Your colors that sit on the top of the paper that granulate tend to lift really easily. So your ultramarines, your cobalts, your earth tones. I like to think of it, I prefer the term sedimentary color versus granulating color just because I think it makes more sense. It's the sedimentation that's giving you that granulating ability, but it also gives you a lift ability. That's another reason I think ultramarine blue is so instrumental on a good watercolor palette because it's such an easy to handle and lift away color if you make an error. I love to do skies with ultramarine blue and cerulean blue. And if I need to make them stormy, add a little burnt sienna because those colors will all lift. And I'm just gonna, while I'm at it, tidy up the interior line there. So you can lift out highlights, all sorts of wonderful things with your sedimentary colors. And my paper is going to dry really quick. I have my little radiator on in here. I set up a little drying rack. I've got some ornaments drying that are going to go into the hand-painted holiday course this year. And I've got some pottery drying so I can go have it fired. I decided I'm going to do that right in here where I use my little radiator anyway. I'm taking some of that yellow ochre, mixing it with some of that purple sludge on my palette. I'm going to add that into the edges, give it a little dimension. And so I figured, well, I might as well kill two birds with one stone. If I'm going to heat this area anyway, and it's a radiator, so it's dry heat, I can use that as drying out my base coated things and my my pottery a little bit more, because otherwise sitting in a cold main basement, pottery is not going to dry all that fast. You don't have to be too fussy about this. I'm just putting in little stripes of this more brownish color, because when you take two opposite colors that are opposite on the color wheel, yellow and purple are opposite, they neutralize each other, so they'll turn each other either brown or gray. Add some of that into the area I just scrubbed. It'd probably be a good idea now to hit this with the heat tool. So if you guys have questions, you know the drill, question in all caps. Type it into the chat and I will answer while I am drying this paper. Oh, you know what? While we're at it, we should get our chain painted. Let's do some more of the yellow ochre right in there. I will get to your questions. Don't worry. Ooh, that makes like a coppery color, that with that more of the bluer color. It's funny with the Masha watercolors because they're not single pigment colors. They're all mixes. They're all interesting mixes. They will give you, when you mix them, you'll get some interesting colors. And I am going with more of a golden chain rather than the silver chain that my chain actually is because I prefer it, but you can do whatever you like. I also want a nice warm, cool contrast. So the shadow is cool. So um, I want my chain and my pocket watch to be warm. We want contrast in our art to add interest, especially when you have a lot of repetition in shape and a lot of repetition in line, like we do here. We have a lot of circles. We have that chain link pattern repeated, so we want to have some contrast. I'm real loose with this. I'll pick up a little bit of that. Color 2, palette sludge painting. And kind of keep this layer on the light side so that we can add some shadows later. We'll also use a little gel pen on there. I might need to scrub out this key a little bit because it got awful skinny on me. And I'm going to have to do something about our chain that has disappeared into our shadow as well. This was one of the most requested paintings to do from my World Watercolor Month. World Watercolor Month sketchbook. I kind of got really busy with Inktober, so I didn't do well. I guess I had some watercolors that I'd filmed ahead of time, but I haven't really painted with watercolor much over the past month, which is really unusual for me. But I think I needed a break. I was getting real stale, so I'm sure you guys noticed it. I was getting really, really stale, so I needed to take a break to I don't know, get a little freshness in my work. I'm gonna fatten up this key a little bit though. I don't like how skinny it is. So we go in with our trusty little scrubber and we lift it out easy as pie because we have granulating colors. Grab a yellow ochre. Granulating colors also will tend to be a little bit more opaque because they sit on the paper instead of sinking in. So you can get a little bit of opacity when you go to paint over something else, like when I go to paint over this shadow. And I've just changed the head of the key, but that's all right. I don't mind. All right, I'm going to get the heat tool out and answer some questions. So skip ahead if you're watching the replay and you're not interested. Noreen asks, hi, Lindsay. In one of your recent videos, you used a clear sticky note to block the area to paint around it. Can you please share the link to those sticky notes? You can find a link to those sticky notes in that video, in the video description, or also on a stat chat from a week earlier. But if you go to that, it's the cake picture. If you go on my channel, just click on that. You can see that in the video description. And it was on sale too. They were a good price. Oh, thank you. The Baileys say they're loving Critique Club. I appreciate that. We have another recommendation for Paul Rubens 100% cotton watercolor paper. That's Astroglau. I hope I'm saying that right. Oh, we have a recommendation for Zen Arts 100% cotton watercolor paper. I have not used that. I think it's pretty affordable too, but I have not tried it myself. Thanks for the recommendation. That was Laura. Thank you. Rhonda asks, have you tried GenCraft 100% cotton paper? No, I have not. If anybody has and could let Rhonda know how it is, please do. I did try ArtBee 100% cotton paper, but it was not 100% cotton. I think they, and I think it was Fabriano Studio 25% cotton that was just rebranded. I think that they were misled onto what they were selling, which happens sometimes with these private labeling companies. Nerdy Watercolorist says in India, the papers made by Sherapet Paper Company is really cheap and 100% cotton, comparable to Arches. Probably a little less sized. It costs less than $1 a sheet. Oh, the Shenzhen paper too is also made in India, and it's very affordable. It is way less sized than Arches. All right, I'm just going to look at the bottom, see if we have any other questions here. Oh, Dolores says Kilimanjaro from Cheap Joe's is really good. Oh gosh, I can't say your name. Briss JB1202 asks, how are you enjoying the empty nest, and how are the children enjoying being away from home? I'm enjoying the empty nest quite a bit. I didn't know how I was going to do with it, but the kids have all come home a few times since they've left for college. So that's good. So it hasn't been too bad. I've noticed I have a lot more energy where I'm not like cooking and cleaning after 5 people. So that's been really good. So it's just me and my husband here. But yeah, it's been doing good. They're doing great at school and out at their apartment, and yeah, they're happy and I'm happy. Everybody's doing really good. So knock on wood. I hope it stays that way. And okay. And Nell Crams asks, where do you find most of your inspiration for painting watercolors? Oh, everywhere. I mean, like, sometimes I'll do challenges and they'll have like a prompt. And so that will be an inspiration to find something to do. I like to set up my own still lifes when I have the energy, and, that's inspiring. A lot of times I just kind of like will browse on commercially used photo sites like Unsplash and Pixabay, and something will strike my fancy. Or sometimes I'll just get an idea. Like I have an idea I'm working on right now, and it's using clear watercolor ground over book pages and scrapbook papers and things like that to paint on. So I'm kind of like into that idea right now. Yeah, I just kind of, if I get an idea, I kind of jump on it before I lose my interest. And that's where I go from there, I guess. Okay, let's test our paper. After the heat from the heat tool wears off, you can kind of put your hand on your paper on the back side and see if it feels cool or room temperature. And if it feels cool, you are set to carry on. I'm going to try doing this with my liner. I may need to switch to a smaller brush, but I want to get the printing on the watch here. And I'm going to take let's see, I want to make my own gray. I'm going to take some of that brown that I used earlier. I'm going to mix it in with some blue that I think has some ultramarine in it. So you could use ultramarine blue and burnt sienna or burnt umber. Something in that ilk anyway. I'm going to add some ultramarine just because it's such a reliable color. And I know I can get a really non-muddy black, because I'm not sure. I don't remember. I do have the information on the pigments on those, but I don't have it right in front of me, and I don't remember what's in every one of them. So I feel a little safer mixing a dark from what I know. Make sure there's no water beads on the ferrule of your brush, especially with a liner. And one thing I like about a liner is that it can keep you really loose. So, because you have less control. So I'm going to do an X. I'm really bad at lettering. So instead of thinking about drawing the, oh, I did that too high, but you know what? That's where it's going to stay. Instead of thinking about I'm drawing this letter or I'm drawing this number, I just try to like almost just draw the shape. Now here I actually need a circle. You know what? I think I will just, that'd be big enough. Not quite. Well, that's a fine mess. I'm gonna have to freehand a circle here. That's all right. I will do little dot to dots here and hope for the best. holding my brush straight up and down, so I hope I'm not causing grief with my autofocus, but I won't be doing this forever. I'm just trying to get that shape in there. And there's like a little, I don't know, what is this, a second hand? These fancy watches. I don't know what this hand does, but it's like a clock within a clock, and it's got some little marky-doos, which I can't read, so I'm just gonna do little squiggles, little tap-taps of my brush. When in doubt, just kind of fudge it. Anybody looking at your painting that close to read the time, they don't need to be looking at your painting, they need to get a life. Isn't it nice not to have all the political ads today, guys? I'm loving that. Oh my gosh, I'm so sick of the political ads. Maisie came home to vote, because she tried to vote early, but she missed it by 1 day in town. So I guess she got home. I slept through it. She got home at like 11:30 the night before, and the dog woke me up to go out so early, and I couldn't get back to sleep afterwards. But then I'm like, oh, her car is here. First, I'm like, there's weird shoes in the living room. Like, oh, she came home to vote. So that was nice to, help her experience that voting for the first time. I remember the first time I voted, I was a freshman in college, and I was lucky because I voted absentee. My mom got me an absentee ballot, but we got to see the the gubernatorial debates in my college. I went to Husson, and that was really cool. And actually, one of the people that was running for governor, she didn't win, but she's been our state senator for like the last 20 years, which has been kind of Susan Collins, which has been kind of cool. It was cool to see. Well, she actually worked at Husson for quite a while. We always used to joke, if you can't win an election, then you can work at Husson. It was just kind of neat, I remember voting, and we had an independent governor, and I was so excited to vote that first time, and I voted for our independent governor, and he won, which we were like one of the only states in the country that had an independent governor, so a governor that's not enrolled in one of the two major political parties, which I thought that was very cool of us here in Maine, and he was a great leader, I think, anyway. And he's our other senator right now, so they're both senators, and I got to see them debate it out when I was in college, which I don't know. I love election day. I always vote on election day. I don't vote early because I like to be part of the experience. And plus the Boy Scouts do a bake sale, so it's fun to go and support the Scouts too. So they're right out there, the polling place, selling some goodies. All right. So another thing, when I'm doing something like something round, like a clock or a flower, I try to divide up the space. So if I've got 12 here, then I'm going to get 3 here. And I know my lines are too close to the edge compared to what the clock is, but I already put the first one down. I'm not scrubbing that out because that's going to look way worse than me trying to fix. I might switch to a smaller brush because to get this wet enough to get the flow I want, I might end up flooding with my, I wish I taped this paper down. Okay, so I'm going to say if you go with the Paul Rubens watercolor paper, the glitter paper, tape it down. It does, even though situations you wouldn't think that would warp, it will warp. So then we got 4, and then we got V. We got V. V is 5. Oh my gosh, it's been so long since I had to do Roman numerals. Has not come up in life as much as we thought it would when we had to study that in school. And then I'll do 4 lines here. This is kind of fun. This is just one of those puttery little parts of the picture. I'm just going to make a little line for where I want to stop and where I want to start my lines, because I am not a letterer. I'm doing my best. Isn't that sad? And this is because it's going to get. Could do that with a pen, I suppose. But then I think it would stand out too much of being like pen instead of brush, and I think it would look worse. I think the fact this is a little looser actually looks better. All right. I need a 1 and a 2 here. Oh gosh, that's pretty far apart. I didn't space that very well. Oh well. Somebody bought this watch at the Dollar Tree. This vintage watch. The numbers don't line up very well. This was a second. This was a surplus watch. This was sold out of somebody's trench coat on the side of the road, side of the street. Oh well. Let's see. Now let's go across from there. Let's get our 9, I guess. I'm just looking at my reference and painting it the way I see it, because I'm not going to try to figure out if it should be upside down or right side up or anything like that, because I have a feeling I will guess wrong. We get 10, which is just an X, and then we get XI. Good enough. All right, and then here we've got, oh my gosh, I gotta zoom into that. That is VIII. So we'll do my eyes first. Probably making every calligrapher cringe. What I did there, I should have just picked a direction and done all my eyes parallel, and instead I was kind of like radiating out from the center. So you're better off just to pick a direction and go with it. Like here, these will be parallel to one another. Hey, that doesn't look too bad. I mean, it was a little wonky, but I think overall it looks fine. So now I've got these other, I don't know, I think I'm just gonna do some little ticky marks, maybe I'm just gonna do a line. I'm gonna try to line it up with where the things start, because I just need to make some sense of this, and I can't go back in time to where I put that first line down and it was too, see what I mean? Like, you know what? This isn't the right pocket watch. That's not the pocket watch. I had the wrong pocket watch the whole time. What the heck? Did I lose that pocket watch? Oh no, there it is. It's this one. Oh, look at that, guys. I had the wrong pocket watch the whole time. Yeah, so there's like, oh, that time is right. The time didn't change. See, there's like that little line, and there's like 65, 10, 15, 20. So it's like seconds. I don't have room for that. So I'm going to, boy, my observing skills are top notch today. I'm just going to go in and kind of make a little line that connects the top of our little Roman numerals here. We're just going to pretend those little tiny second marks don't exist. So I was thinking after doing Inktober that, because anytime I did something from imagination, I thought it just looked so amateurish. And I'm like, I need to be better observing. I need to like make a point to observe things better. So yeah, I mean, even though I have it in front of me, it takes me a while to realize, oh, that's not even the right, that's not the right clock. I'm debating whether I want to do something in the center, but I may just keep it kind of simple. Well, you know what I could do? I think maybe I'll do a double line there, because I like how that has kind of a double line there up on that one, even though it's above and not going through my letters. I kind of like it though. And then we'll let this dry, and then we'll do the shadow on the inside of our watch. We'll do some shadows on the brass, and then we'll do some highlights. I'm going to do I'm just going to do 2 little marks like that, maybe. Well, I like a double little mark. Let's do a double little mark. Yeah, my spacing is not great. I got room for 2 little marks between some of them, but then again, they're different size lines, so I'm going to cut myself some slack. All right, I'm pretty happy with that. All right, so let's do some shadows. And look, this isn't even brass colored. This is like pewter. That's all right. I painted originally thinking about brass. So that's my reasoning. So let's take a little bit of that burnt sienna or burnt umber, whatever color, whatever brown you've been using. Gosh, that on its own looks pretty good. I'll use some of this reddish brown color there. I'm going to do a little bit of that. I like that richness. What you're going for lines that are not blendy here. These are harsh lines because we use something metallic. Metallic has hard lines because it reflects light. You don't have to do this with a liner. In fact, it is kind of hard to control a liner because you have the longer bristles. So if you want more control, you want shorter bristles on your brushes. If you want more control, if you want less control, more color holding capacity, you want longer bristles. There's no perfect brush. There is the brush that you need for the job. When you're doing that, you're trying to do a long pull on a brush, try to move the whole arm if you can. And add some of that into the chain here and there. Just little slices of color. You don't have to be too particular. It's all going to work out. Your colors don't have to match mine. Your brushes don't have to match mine. You can make it work with what you got. All right, I think I will switch to a different brush. I think I'll just go to a small, so this is number 1 round, golden Taklon brush. I'm going to take some ultramarine blue and a little bit of burnt umber, burnt sienna, whichever brown you're using. Make a nice dark. Make sure there's no water on the ferrule. I'm getting warm in here. I have the radiator turned on low, but man, it has gotten warm in this tiny enclosed office. I like how it makes almost a black. Hope my head's not in the way. By using my brush straight up and down, I have a little more control. I'm sorry if my hand gets in the way. If you're painting and you can't finish a painting in one sitting and you're painting something like a still life that you've set up, take a photo of it because you may not have those same lighting situation the next time you go to paint it. And that way you won't get confused, get halfway through a painting and then realize that you've painted it from 2 different lighting sources. You can sharpen up edges too with this really dark mix. Because the value is so dark, it's not really an opaque color, but it's so dark that it'll cover up. It'll lay down on top of other things and look really nice and crisp. Just enough water to make it liquid, really. And thing with like with still life, often you'll see shadows on both sides of things. The light gets bounced around a lot. So it can be kind of confusing. So if you have something you can look at, it's really helpful. But also the nice thing is that you have a little bit more liberty. I don't want to put the black everywhere on the chain, just little slices of it here and there. And then when I go to highlight, I'll do little slices of a white gel pen here and there. And that will give me that illusion of light reflecting off metal. And that's all painting is really, is just doing an illusion of what we see. I'm going to switch back to the liner though, because I don't like dipping my brush every 2 seconds. That is annoying. You do need a more liquid paint when you use your liner though, just kind of keep that in mind. And that is not liquid enough. I like how a liner will give you a little bit more of a random line and also a really fine line. So if you're somebody that likes to overthink and over control everything, you can't, it's going to impart a little bit of randomness in there and looseness to it. So when people are like, I really would like to loosen up more, Lindsay, how can I loosen up more? Use a bigger brush, use a brush with longer bristles, things like that, where you have to give up control are going to help you. And it can be uncomfortable if you like to have that. You may want to loosen up, but you also may really like having control. You may have to force the control out of the situation. One more thing I want to do before I take a break for questions is warm up some of this brass. I'm going to use some of this color here. Maybe just a little bit of yellow ochre for a little bit of viscosity. I'm scrubbing out a little bit of that dark. It was a little too much. And I'm reassigning it. And I'm going to do a little bit of warmth here and there in the chain as well. Cross-pollinate. If you have any questions, you know the drill. I'll put them in the chat with the word question capitalized, and I will have a look. All right, I think that'll probably dry on its own fine, so I'll just scroll back here. I'm starting at the most recent and working backwards. Nell asks, would you rather paint from still life or landscapes outdoors? Well, it depends. If the weather's beautiful, then I love to paint outdoors, but if it's cold, I'd rather paint still lifes inside. And actually, subject-wise, I do prefer still life myself. Arta Jules, I think that's it. I have some beautiful granulation on a painting, something stone I've been working on. Love it, but the shadows aren't dark enough. If I add to it to get the contrast, will it lose the effect? Probably. If you're gonna go over a whole granulating area, you could, or you could very, very gently do a thin glaze, and you may not disturb the paint underneath, but granulating colors are sedimentary and they lift really easily. So you'd have to be super gentle. And plus you'd also lose some of the contrast between the paper and the paint. So that would make it a little less granulating looking. So, but I always say, if you're not happy with your painting, then you might as well try. All right. Yeah, the paints I'm using, Gina, are $39. The Rosa Gallery ones anyway, the modern set. And then I also have some of the traditional colors mixed in there too. I'm just scrolling back to see if we have any questions. Nell asked what size brush is Lindsay using. I'm not sure which one she was talking about. I used a number 8 round. I used a number 1 liner and a number 1 round, and I also used a 1/2 inch cat's tongue. And the scrubber was a number 6. This little scrubber was a number 6 there. And if you didn't paint along today and you want to paint along, there will be a replay. So please watch it again. Tell your friends. Let's make watercolor popular again on YouTube. Okay, I think I'm caught up. Gloria asks, when is your sketchbook class with Danny? That class already happened. That was a live class on October 15th. So that has come and gone. They may rebroadcast it, but there's no plans yet to rebroadcast it. But if they do, I will definitely let people know about it on my channel. Somebody says, Art as your muse, have you tried Gen Craft's gouache? I have not. I've only used their brush pens, which were fine. They're your typical private labeled, watercolor brush pen, but they're fine. But I have not used their gouache. I think a lot of the products coming out by companies like Gen Crafts and other newer companies on YouTube, not YouTube, on Amazon, are oftentimes they're selling the exact same thing, just with a different label on them. So, be savvy, guys. If you already have something that's working all right for you, just stick with it. I mean, a lot of it's just the same thing with a different label on it. All right, so I want to do this shadow in here. I'm going to do some ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. That's a nice reliable gray. The Rosa Gallery paints, I will tell you, are kind of on the sticky side, kind of like very similar to a honey-based paint. So if you live in a really humid area, make sure you keep, I would actually just anyway, make sure you keep these flat and just be careful. They're very kind of gooey. So that's something you might want to consider if you're planning on getting them for like a travel palette. They are probably not the best choice unless you're like traveling someplace where it's really dry. In that case, it would be very handy if you lived in like Denver or Arizona, someplace with like a high altitude, really dry climate. You probably find that to be really helpful, but otherwise, maybe not. Look at that. One stroke wonder, baby. Yeah, I think that's pretty good just on its own. If you do want to add a little more color, you could just kind of drop it in. Paints it just fine the first try and then proceeds to go in and futz with it. Not recommended. Do as I say, not as I do. But I felt like I wanted the value a little bit darker there. And now I've got to reshape the edge. And now I've really made a fine mess. A fine mess. Nah, it's no big deal. I'll blot it off. I just wanted it a little bit darker on the edge. But I got to be careful not to stir up that paint underneath too much. I just blotted the extra paint off my brush so I could just kind of give it a little stroke to smooth it out. Making it streaky though. I should have just left it at that first stroke of paint, but I was flying too close to the sun. That's all right. I need to round this out a little bit more though. Because if you're not happy with it, you gotta risk it, right? Fortune favors the brave. Yeah, that's all right. Yeah. I like that. I don't want to go juicy with a shadow in there just because we get too much going on in there already. I think we can use either a white gel pen or a colored pencil, whatever you might like, to do a little bit of zhuzhing. Actually, I bet some colored pencils would be even nice on the brass. So maybe I will grab just maybe some like brown, yellow ochre, those types of colors. That might be nice. I like to mix media it up, quite frankly. I feel like it really gives a painting a little bit more oomph. And actually, apparently I like copper a little bit more than brass, so I know I do. So I'm going more coppery. And I have wax-based pencils in a rack next to my desk. I grab them quite frequently. I have a combination of Holbein and Prismacolor here. Holbeins are harder than Prismacolors, but you know, the more I've kind of had them in that container next to my desk, the more I find myself grabbing them and using them. I don't have a lot. I have 36. My friend Jane had an extra set she shared with me. And you know, it's one of those things. It's like at first I was like, oh, I don't know. Maybe I wasn't that keen on them because it was a smaller selection of colors and it felt like it was more work to do what I was doing. But you know, the more that I use them, I will kind of grab them interchangeably with my Prismacolors and not really notice too much. I also have my Brutfuner pencils in there too, which are not as opaque, but they're wax-based, so they do have a certain amount of opacity to them. This is really handy over the area where we had the shadow and we didn't reserve the lights. And by the way, if you don't like this, don't do it. You don't have to. I like it, so that's why I'm doing it. I'm going to sharpen that, so watch your ears. And I get asked what pencil sharpener I use, and it is a Jarlink 6 to 8 millimeter pencil sharpener. It's about $15 on Amazon, I think. And I've been using that for about a year, and it's held up really well. It's pretty fast, too. Whoops. Does sharpen your pencils real sharp, though, so be careful with those softer ones. They might want to snap on you. All right. I feel like I think we'll go in with a little white. I'm going to give it a quick sharpen. Hopefully it doesn't snap. Joey says my fine mess was an opportunity to show people how well colors lift. Yeah, they certainly do. When I'm using a pencil, I'm trying to keep a point on it, I will kind of rotate it as I use it, and that way I'm always keeping a little bit of a fine point. So I would use a pencil to highlight when I don't want a super shiny highlight, when I want a more softer, subtle highlight. And then I would go in with my gel pen or paint pen when I want a more robust highlight. Like this is kind of matte here, so I'm just doing a really light application there. Oh, cream would be a really good color too to use on that, because that's a nice, you can highlight with it, but it's not overbearing. I am not a watercolor purist. I used to be, actually. I used to be very much a stickler for that. But then I crossed over to the dark side and never looked back. I'm like, why am I? It was almost just like I would just not use other stuff just to prove that I could. And it's like, okay, that's fine. But I want to create the art that I feel like creating. And I'm not going to just arbitrarily not use mediums together just to prove that I'm a quote unquote better artist. I'm like, that's silly. That's ridiculous. So I decided that I was going to use what I wanted to use. And I have not regretted it for a moment. All right, let's grab a white gel pen. I usually have a variety of these on my desk. I had an artisanal one that was holding up really well, but I don't know what I did with it. So we're going to use this Jelly Roll. I'm out of Uniball pens at the moment. I want to make this, the face of this look kind of shiny, so I'm just going to do a little bit of reflection right over my shadow. Maybe even do like a little bit like there's like a beveled glass. I'll hit some of the areas where I really want there to be a stronger shine. There's got to be contrast for the gel pen to show up. So if you're going over something that's really light with a gel pen, you're not going to get very much contrast. So keep that in mind. You're going to see more shine where things bend. That's where they tend to catch the light. So if you've got chain link where it's bending, that's where it's generally going to catch the light. You can help divide it from the shadow too. If you've got, if you can't pick apart where the shadow is and where the object is, you can add a slice of highlight on the object, and then that will pull it out away from the shadow a little bit. And if you feel like you need more dark definition, you can do that with a black gel pen. Not a black gel pen. Well, you could use a black gel pen. I would prefer a black fine liner. Those are like the Microns or any of the pens with like a felt tip black line. They'll be a little bit easier to control. A gel pen can sometimes smear. It's not that big with white because you can generally lift it off. But if you smear like a black gel pen, that could that would be, oh, it's almost like oily based, and I don't think you could lift that off. I think white gel pens might be water based because they lift off really easily. So just a little bit of a tip there, and I think I'm going to call this done, and I will take a break for more questions. I can't see a sparkle on the screen when I look at my monitor, but it does sparkle in real life, and it's really kind of fun. Now I'm a little off center, so if I was to frame this, I would just mat it so this is kind of in the middle, but I'm pretty happy with this. I think this is really cute. I think this would make a nice gift framed up. So I think it's just something that could really exist in like a bedroom or a parlor or something. I just think it's really kind of vintage and classic and timeless. And oh, I probably should do something more with that. Looking at that really skinny hand, that looks like it should be a little bit thicker. But if you have questions, go ahead and post them. I'll get to them in just a second. And when you if you watch the replay to paint along, remember you can pause it anytime you want to. Feel like there should be like a little arrow on the end of that and a little thingy like that. I also feel like that should be a little bit darker on the edge where I put that lighter colored pencil. I don't think I really like that. All right, I'm going to stop fussing with it before I do something I regret. All right, let's take a look at the comments. If you guys are if you're leaving us, then thank you so much for watching. But I'm going to go back and answer any comments that have come in. Jennifer K says, bummer, I missed joining you on time, but at least I got here before you ended. Yes, thank you, Jennifer. You can always check out the replay. Clark Fine Art says, great job. Thanks for the new role on the channel. Thank you for moderating, Angela. It's Angela Clark at Clark Fine Art. She has an artsy YouTube channel as well. And she was one of our lovely moderators because I got hit by spam big time over the past week. Nerdy Watercolorist asks, question, if I were to add a certain background, what could I do? Any ideas? My first suggestion would be think about a background first and put that background in first, because adding a background at this point, you're going to disrupt it's going to be very hard to get a background around this. I would recommend, if you wanted to do a background, to do it first, do it wet into wet, and maybe not have a crisp shadow, but have like a softer shadow so you can get that granulation and it wouldn't be too fussy. Backgrounds that might look nice would be like maybe a leather texture or a wood grain texture, like it's sitting on a nightstand or something, so you got a wood grain behind it. Or maybe even if you wanted to take a contrast of textures, maybe like a lace or something, like it's sitting on a lace tablecloth. That would be really pretty. Somewhere embroidered, some sort of embroidered pattern, that would be really pretty and be a nice contrast to what we have going on here. Nell says she uses Dr. P.H. Martin's bleed proof white for highlights if needed. That's a great product. I use that too quite a bit. Nerdy watercolorist likes to push, he says, or she, I'm not sure, likes to push myself to keep the paintings in watercolor as much as possible, though I resort to gouache when necessary. It kind of helps me grow as an artist. Sure, absolutely. You do you. Just looking back for questions. Looks like Christine Gilmore had a question, but I don't see it. I just see the word question. And Scarlett's catching up from the beginning with the neighbor cat in the summer house. Oh, Kitty loves your voice. Watching closely. Oh, that's nice. Okay, I think I have caught up. All right, guys. Do you think S. Mormon asks, do you think a nice background could be done with colored pencils? Oh yeah, absolutely. I would try to avoid the shadow there. Like you could do like an embroidery or a fabric or something with colored pencils, or even a wood grain if you wanted to. I kind of like the contrast where it's so white next to the color, but you can do whatever you like. Gloria says, question, when do you come on live? I came on at noon and I did post about it. I did schedule this yesterday on YouTube and I did a blog post this morning. So follow my blog at thefrugalcrafter.wordpress.com. You can also hit the notification bell here on YouTube. And when I schedule a live stream, it should give you a warning. A warning, watch out, Lindsay's coming on live. So that's a way you can keep track. Generally, if I'm going to do a live stream, it's usually around noontime. It's often on Wednesdays. And I have a lot of watercolor paintings that I've done like for World Watercolor Month and whatnot that I'm thinking about live streaming. So that would generally be it, but not always. I mean, I kind of go when I feel like it, when I have the urge and the time. Yes, Sura asks if I used Graphitint for the initial drawing. Yes, I did. I'll tell you the color here too. This is a steel blue, which is a cool gray. It worked really well. And then I don't have any pencil lines, which I really like too. I did have to go in with a mechanical pencil because I couldn't get the I was trying to use, I'm not sure if this is what it's meant for. I imagine it is. I was trying to use those tiny little holes in there to do some smaller circles, but I was having a hard time getting it to spin when I was doing that. So it could just be it's too new. I just need to break it in more. Okay, gosh, I think, oh, another question from Nell. What size journal is in the right-hand corner? This is, I think it's about just shy of 5 by 5. I linked it in the video description. My friend Rosie has an Etsy shop and she made this and she sells them as well. And the paper's nice enough you can do on both sides, which is really fun. I had a lot of requests to do this coffee cup too, so I might do that one live stream. That was so weird. I'm like, really? People want to see this one? I was so frustrated and upset with the way this came out. I was just so aggravated that I thought that was kind of funny. That's another one that had the most requests to do a live stream on. So maybe I will. Maybe I will. I've used up all of my pre-recorded videos during Inktober, so like just going on live is a little easier than filming it and editing it. All right, did I miss another one? Are we good? Oh, Noreen asks, even if you want to use acrylic or gouache for the background, will it disrupt the painting? Yes, acrylic would still lift, and gouache would still lift up the background if you wanted to go in around it. I think it would be very awkward looking. If you did acrylic or gouache first, the gouache would lift if you put watercolor over it. Gouache lifts very easily. Acrylic wouldn't lift, but it will seal the paper, so you won't be able to go over it with watercolor. So you'd have to really be careful not to paint any areas you want to do watercolor. And I think it could give you kind of a cut and paste look, which may be what you're after. Acrylic is generally not something I would use under watercolor just because of the fact that it seals down the surface. All right. Nerdy Watercolorist asked, are graphitins erasable? They are a bit erasable, not perfectly erasable, but I was able to erase it while I was, if you go back to the beginning of the video, when I first drew that and I changed it, I was able to erase it. I wouldn't guarantee that they're all going to be perfectly erasable, but you can always add water and just swoosh them out. You know, that's a way you can get rid of them if you don't like it. But they are very pigmented. All Derwent products are very pigmented, so it might be hard to get off all that color. I'd scrub it and lift it with a rag, a wet paper, dry paper towel rather. Jennifer asks, sorry question. After it dries, could you use masking fluid over the painting and then do a background? You can. So what Jennifer's asking, so we got the painting done. Could you paint everything with masking fluid and then do a background over it? Theoretically, yes, you can. Sometimes, though, when you put masking fluid down, masking fluid is very adhesive. So when you go to pull the masking fluid up, you may pull off some of your painting. You may pull off some pigment, which isn't the end of the world. You could retouch it and stuff, but you'd also get very hard edges. So any place you had that masking fluid and then you painted over it and you remove the masking fluid, you're going to have a very hard edge, a very crisp line, which often cannot look very natural. Often it will look like you cut and pasted the pieces down. So I mean, pardon me, it's up to you. It's up to you and what you like. Personally, I would just get if I'm going to do a background, I like to get the background first, because the other thing when you do a background after the fact is that it is going to change all of your values. So right now, my lightest value is white of the paper. My darkest value is these shadows. If I go in and add a background, then all of a sudden, all of my relative values are no longer going to be in relation to one another. I might need to darken a ton of stuff. I may need to add extra highlights. I may have to rework the entire painting to make the background feel natural. So that my number one piece of advice is, if you want a background, do the background first. I think in probably 99% of the situations, your painting will look better if your background's in first. And it'll be easier because you don't have to reassess and adjust all your values at the end. Let's see. Joy is saying the video is not clear today. It looks clear on my end. Maybe you have some internet issues. I'm not sure. I'll have to look back at the replay. When you replay it, use the gear. Make sure you're set at like 108, 1008, whatever. The high resolution, 1080. Make sure you have 1080 selected when you go to watch it back. I don't think my camera's dirty. It looks very clean to me, and I do clean it regularly. I'm looking at the lens right now. It's clean. So I'm not sure why it was looking grainy to Joy. I would just try watching the replay and making sure you have the highest quality selected. Nobody else has mentioned that. All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Please give me a thumbs up before you go. And yeah, I hope you have a wonderful day, wonderful rest of the week, and we'll see you next time. Happy crafting. Bye.